The end of lockdowns has had an undesirable effect on the global pizza giant Domino's after first half profit fell 6.9% to $89.1 million. Well, the company shares also dived today. At one stage, they were down by 15%. It seems that as soon as people have been released from lockdowns, their consumption of home-delivered pizza has also fallen. Ed Boyd caught up with the Chief Executive, Don Meij, and started by asking about the impact of the Ukraine crisis on its European operations.
From what we've seen, it's mainly been around the communications of what might happen with energy prices. So we've already seen energy price inflation. I think it's been already built in, from my understanding, but time will tell. Otherwise, all other food supply chains are not from that region.
Well, I know Russia and Ukraine are some of the world's biggest suppliers of wheat as well. Was that going to have any impact on pizza prices in Europe?
We don't think so right now. As I said, we've already built in what we've seen with inflation in these areas. I think there's already been the assumptions, but it's too early to tell on how wide and how far it spreads. But there's been inflation in our cost base already, and that's already been built in.
But do you think this conflict may have an impact on consumer confidence in the European area as well?
Look, it's a really unfortunate thing, but typically in crises, Domino's actually performs well, which is really unfortunate as people are more attuned to the media, the more people go into home. So when we've seen natural disasters and other significant events in the world, unfortunately, there's more people at home, and that means that there's more delivered meals. So at this point in time, I'm not expecting any sort of other negative impacts.
What about in Australia and New Zealand? How much impact has inflation here had on your costs and pizza prices?
Yeah, so we've made sure, because we buy our contracts and we have visibility to 6 to 12 months out, we were able to anticipate coming into January a much more customer-centric focus. So across the business, Australia and New Zealand no exception, we implemented what we call our more for more internally. That is, where we have taken some price, it's because we're giving the customer more. We may be upgrading a crust, and when the customer, it's up to the customer, it's their choice. But if they choose to buy that crust because we make it so attractive, then we're able to pass on some of the inflation that way. Or we may have been taking an quality of an ingredient up, or putting more ingredient on a pizza. These are the sort of strategies, sometimes another side item, that we're very, very focused, that we're in the value business, and if we're going to take any price movement in the size of our basket, because we sell a food order, that basket is going to include more if we're going to take more.
Then petrol prices here, they're approaching $2 a litre. Does that have an impact on your delivery drivers?
Yeah, not really. You know that our fleet is significantly enhanced by electric vehicles. So across our business, we've been rolling out electric bikes and electric scooters. So there's a little bit of movement in that area, but there's such a good elasticity in how much we reimburse our drivers. You also need to know our delivery times continue to shrink. So our delivery areas are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And we are already the most efficient delivery company. That is that we have the shortest drive times in the business. So when something like that has an impact on the business, we're going to get a smaller piece of that because of just how close we are to the customer.
Inflation last year in Australia climbed 3.5%, and it's probably going to climb similar amounts this year. So you're saying the best way that you deal with it is by changing your deals for customers?
Not so much even the deals, but there is a little bit of work there. It's more the offers, so innovating around product, innovating around our technology, so that in the end we're giving the customer more if they choose to want to buy. And if we make it attractive enough, that's what we're seeing is happening. And there's an opportunity here that Domino's continues to look like better and better value in the market.
So you've benefited from people staying at home during the pandemic, but that's all finally starting to come to an end. It looks like same-store sales growth's likely to be lower this year. So how do you deal with that and keep investors happy with shares down about 15% today?
Yeah, so the biggest impact so far has been Japan, and it's hard to get disappointed with Japan when it's up 61% over the 2 years after the rebasing. But Japan was a market that when it did come out of the state of emergency, it was rebased. If we look at Australia, Australia is actually enjoying some of its strongest sales within the group. So we call out Australia, Taiwan and the Benelux over in Europe. And overall Europe has stayed really strong. So for the rest of our business outside of Japan, delivery growth is really strong. You know, we had the great reopening in Europe in summer, and so where people were returning to restaurants, bars, cafes and so on, and yet our delivery continued to boom. So we believe that's going to continue, that ultimately there's still more home consumption. People are still working more from home. You know, places like Brisbane and Perth, where we unfortunately didn't suffer as much from the lockdowns, actually behaved exactly like all of the lockdown markets, in that is delivery continued to grow. So pre-lockdown curfews, all the different things around the world, Japan is the only one that got rebased.
Dom Meij, Chief Executive, Domino's Pizza Enterprises, thanks for your time.
Thank you.